In case you hadn't heard, Volvo estates are curvier and sportier these days, as is ably demonstrated by this V60. Despite its sleeker styling direction, this car isn't a clone of its German compact executive rivals, still majoring in Volvo virtues like safety, comfort and practicality. Also included though is a rewarding driving experience and a fine set of petrol and diesel engines.
Estate cars. They used to be things that you bought to carry around loads of kit. Not anymore. These days, most people wanting to do that will buy an MPV or an SUV, leaving estate cars to focus almost completely on style and driving dynamics. Which is why compact executive wagons like Audi's A4 Avant and BMW's 3 Series Touring can't actually carry that much more than the saloons upon which they're based. Now, you wouldn't expect Volvo, a solid traditional brand that pioneered the kind of boxy estate car into which you could fit a fridge or several, to want much to do with this kind of trendy form over function approach. And you'd be wrong. The Swedish marque actually pioneered this fashion-conscious market niche way back in the 60s, bringing us the classic P1800E that Roger Moore drove as the Saint in the TV series. This, apparently, isn't an estate anyway. According to Volvo's publicity material, I'm to call it a sports wagon. Now, I'm not going to do that, but you get the idea. The type of baggage Gothenburg doesn't want this car to carry is the historical kind that sees it associated with pipe and slippers bound antique dealers for whom sheer driving pleasure is neither desirable or required. Now, Volvo was once bound to this type of market, but all that changed in mid-2010 with the introduction of their BMW 3 Series sized S60 saloon. Here was a car that really could reward at the wheel. Here was a car that you could mention in the same breath as its German prestige badge rivals. And here was a car ready and waiting for a low-slung, style-conscious, fashionable estate variant. A car exactly like this one, the V60. Now, Volvo's first generation S60 saloon wasn't a bad car, but it was far too stodgy to form the basis of an estate to take on models as lithe and agile as BMW's 3 Series Touring and Audi's A4 Avant. Hence the absence of this Swedish brand from this lucrative market sector in recent times, an absence that ends right here. The Mark II S60 may not be quite good enough to spawn an S4 or an M3, but it's quite good enough to hang on to any well-driven, prestige-badged, compact executive estate through any given set of twisties, which means that those in the know will approach a drive in its estate derivative, this V60, with a good deal of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm that's largely justified. True, it isn't quite as sharp either to steer or to throw around the bends as Audi or BMW alternatives, but apparently that's entirely intentional. Volvo reckons that such cars are too stiffly set up, robbing them in extremis of the kind of security and predictability that create a really fluid drive. It's an arguable point, but I have to agree that you really do feel confident at speed behind the wheel of this car. If you're prepared to throw the Labradors round a bit, it flows easily from bend to bend, and unless you're looking at pricey all-wheel drive alternatives, it's certainly more short-footed than most obvious rivals when conditions turn nasty. The ride's better over poor services too. The reasons behind this Swedish contender's rather surprising press-on prowess have much to do with a dynamic chassis, carefully developed over the most demanding British B-roads. Although, if you really don't want that, there's a softer touring setup available as an option. If, on the other hand, you want something more advanced, there's an optional 4C chassis with adaptive damping that, via comfort, sport or advanced modes, enables you to change the character of the car to suit the mood that you're in and the road that you're on. Even if you do without all this and the four-wheel drive system developed for top models, all V60 variants benefit from a corner braking control system that will be a revolution to long-time Volvo owners through sharp bends. turn into a corner and the system lightly brakes the inner driven wheel while transferring power to the outer ones, so that the car is drawn around the corner as if by magnetic force. Brilliant. Under the bonnet, there's certainly no lack of choice, with petrol people choosing between T3 and T4 models that both have Volvo's 1.6 litre GT-DI engine with either 150 or 180 brake horsepower on tap. Next up is a T5 model with a 2 litre GT-DI engine with 240 brake horsepower, and above that is the T6. It's an auto-only, all-wheel drive 3 litre 6-cylinder unit with 304 brake horsepower, capable of rest to 60 in just 6.2 seconds, and it has to be artificially reined in at 155 miles an hour. People who choose either T4 or T5 petrol models get the option of the high-tech dual-clutch 6-speed power-shift automatic transmission that Volvo has borrowed from Ford. If you choose an automatic variant of another lesser model in the V60 range, then you'll have to put up with the older, more ponderous Geartronic Volvo automatic box. Now, this is a transmission you'll probably end up with if you opt for a diesel model with an auto box. And when it comes to the diesel range, there's again plenty of choice. The lineup propped up by an eco-centric 115 brake horsepower 1.6 litre drive model, sitting below two pleasingly characterful 5-cylinder alternatives. There's a 163 brake horsepower 2 litre D3, that's the one most UK customers choose, or a 205 brake horsepower 2.4 litre D5. Now, one of the reasons for the D3's popularity is that it's quite as powerful as most customers will want, sprinting from rest to 60 in 8.7 seconds on the way to a top speed of 137 miles an hour. Lots of people will have a clear idea in their head of what a Volvo estate looks like. This won't be it. Whereas old Volvo designs were a riot of right angles, this one has barely a straight line on it. Its racetrack design seen lines that flow organically into one another like the curves of a race circuit. It's not just different for the sake of being so though. Its short overhangs, alert stance, and a sleek low roofline, creating a silhouette that's more akin to a coupe than that of a boxy estate. All of which takes its toll, of course, when it comes to practicality. The 430 litre load bay is about 10% down on obvious German rivals, so you do get 100 litres more than you'd find in the boot of the S60 model upon which this V60 is based. Now, that's hardly more than Volvo's smaller V50 estate. In fact, you'd be better off with that apparently more compact model if either you load to the ceiling, which you can with these neat retractable nets, or push forward the rear bench to access the 1,207 litre seats folded total. Now, Volvo's designers are unrepentant, pointing out that most bulky items are these days delivered by stores, and for those that do want to transport fridges and the like, they provide V70, XC70 and XC90 models further up the range. It's certainly undeniable that the 3 metre long load space that is on offer is certainly accessible and very easy to use. The rear bench splits 40, 20, 40 and folds almost flat to the floor. You've got a rear compartment under the estate floor to keep valuables from prying eyes, and a flap on top of that so you can put muddy boots in without having to continually clean the estate floor. There's an optional grocery bag holder to keep your shopping upright, or you can tick the box for a telescopic frame setup that is able to compartmentalise your luggage space. There's also an optional hot box which connects to a power source here in the estate compartment, keeping food warm or drinks cold. If you're carrying really long items, then 2 catches at the bottom of the front passenger seat click to enable it to be folded right forward, so that you have easy carriage for lengthy items like surfboards and bikes. In the rear seat you get marginally more headroom than you would in an S60, but otherwise the accommodation on offer is much the same, which means that there's comfortable space for 2 adults, but as with almost every other car in this sector, 3 would be a bit of a squash on anything but shortish journeys. 3 children though across the back here will be quite comfortable, and their parents may also want to specify the fold out booster seats that fold out from the seat base cushions. At the wheel, where you sit a bit lower than in most other Volvos, it's not quite as luxurious as the plushest of its rivals, but there's an emphasis on cool Scandinavian design that IKEA fans will like very much. Now, the dashboard itself is commendably free of button clutter, there being nothing worse than a car with so many switches that it seems cleverer than you are. The traditional Volvo floating centre console is present and correct, in this model angled more towards the driver for a more cockpit orientated feel. Material choice is premium. There's real wood, leather and aluminium available depending on the trim that you choose. The choice of cabin materials is certainly very upmarket. The seats, meanwhile, are brilliantly comfortable, the controls are clear, and everything feels solidly built. Most Volvo V60s will sell in the £25,000 to £37,000 bracket, representing a premium of around £1,600 over the S60 Saloon. If you want to go from petrol to diesel derivative, then you're looking at a premium of around £1,800. Now, those kind of prices see this Volvo pitched somewhere between compact executive estate wannabes like sport wagon examples of cars like Alfa Romeo's 159 and Saab's 93, and the German brands that actually rule the roost, BMW, Audi and Mercedes. Now, against these, this Volvo looks conspicuously good value. The 163 brake horsepower D3D variant that most will want, for example, will save you about £1,000 on an alternative BMW 318D Touring, and up to £3,000 on an equivalent Audi A4 Avant 2-litre TDI 143 PS. And that's despite it offering 20 brake horsepower more. If you go for the D5, the 205 brake horsepower model that I've got here, then you're looking at savings of £3,000 to £4,000 over a comparable Audi A4 and BMW 3 Series alternatives. Whichever V60 variant you choose, 1.6, 2-litre or 3-litre petrol, or 1.6, 2-litre or 2.4-litre diesel, you should find your car to be decently equipped. Even base spec models get alloy wheels, cruise control, power heated mirrors, climate control, a decent quality 6-speaker CD stereo with steering wheel controls off the leather covered wheel and a 5-inch colour display screen. What really makes this car stand out though is its safety provision. It's not cheap when you consider what goes into it, ran the old Volvo advertising strapline back in the 70s. Right along the bottom of a page showing a Cub Scout pack climbing in. But that was in an era where Volvo safety was mainly about protecting you after you'd had an accident. Today, more laudably, it's more about making sure that you don't have one in the first place. So fitted as standard to every V60 is Volvo's clever City Safe system, which is able to detect objects ahead of you that you may have missed and help you brake to avoid them. It can actually brake the car for you at very low speeds, like in stop-start traffic, or if you're travelling at higher ones, then it can brake to minimise the effect of an accident. Now, further options that can reduce accident potential include adaptive bi-xenon headlamps that follow the car around corners, and a clever twin camera arrangement that helps you see more easily at blind junctions. Now, if you go a step further and order the driver support pack, then your car's pedestrian detection system can even detect a person in the road ahead, and if you don't respond to flashing light warnings, can automatically brake the car to avoid them. The same flashing light warning system and auto braking system is also used in the car's collision warning setup. It's a system that can prevent accidents at high speeds as well. Now, if to all of that you add in the adaptive cruise control option that V60 customers can specify, that keeps you a safe distance to the car ahead when you're on the motorway. The lane departure warning system that alerts dozy drivers when they're veering out of their lanes on the highway, and the blind spot information system that stops you dangerously pulling out of lane in front of another car, and it's hard to imagine a driver of this Volvo ever getting into trouble. But if they ever did, there's 6 airbags, the DSTC dynamic stability and traction control system, and ABS of course with brake assist, brake fade control, and a ready alert system that primes your anchors for an emergency stop. For towers, there's even a clever trailer stability system. The V60 promises low running costs for a car of its size, with the entry-level diesel drive model most noteworthy in this respect. Its 1.6 litre engine capable of returning just 114 grams per kilometre of CO2, and that's a very eco-centric return. Most customers though will probably want a bit more poke than that variant can offer. And unlike the 3 litre T6 model that manages just 27.7 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle from its petrol engine, the D3 and D5 diesel variants don't require you to pay too heavily for their performance, both managing 139 grams per kilometre of CO2 and 53.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. It's a similar story when it comes to residual values. Not class leading, but very impressive for a car of this kind. Experts expect that this V60 will return residuals more in line with BMW and Audi than with Volkswagen or Ford. Volvo estates aren't what they used to be, and in this case that's a very good thing. This V60 will, I think, find it rather easier than its S60 saloon stablemate to conquest sales from its German rivals. Indeed, many Volvo customers who started out looking at that four-door will find this car mighty difficult to resist. This then is a tale of the unexpected, both in terms of style and speed. True, there have been practical compromises made to achieve it, but the result is a car that many buyers new to the brand will find very tempting. If you're just about to sign for an A4 or 3 Series sized estate of this kind, then it might be worth trying one of these before you do. Sweet dreams are made of this.